Welcome back to my second build for episode Revenant. Today we are continuing the previous trend because I'm bringing you what I believe is the strongest Stasis Warlock build this season, and no, it doesn't use Rhymecoat Raiment. As I'm sure we all know by now, Stasis is the new hotness this season, and today's build is going to fully take advantage of all of the new changes and artifact perks to deliver a perfect setup that excels in even the highest levels of endgame content. And to prove it, all the gameplay featured is from Expert Onslaught Salvation on Widow's Court. So instead of Rhymecoat Raiment, today we are focusing heavily on the tried and true Osmiomancy Gloves. And the reason for that is because this build hinges more on freezing targets as quickly as possible, something which Stasis Turrets and Rhymecoat Raiment are good at, but not quite as good as Osmiomancy. Furthermore, unlike the last build, we're actually opting to go with the pure Stasis subclass this time, since despite Prismatic Warlock having access to the Coldsnap Grenade and Devour, regular Stasis has too many advantages when it comes to freezing entire rooms and rewarding you with damage resistance and healing for doing so. The essence of this build is crowd control, something which Stasis is famous for being good at. But on the flip side, Stasis is generally pretty average when it comes to actually dispatching the ads you so effectively crowd controlled in the first place. So to fix this, the cherry on top that absolutely seals the build is none other than the newly reprised Icebreaker exotic sniper rifle. For those of you who were lucky enough to defeat the corrupted puppeteer on contest mode, this weapon was a guaranteed drop, though fret not if you don't have it, since we're going to be discussing alternatives that come relatively close to what Icebreaker can offer this build. The reason that Icebreaker fits so nicely is because part of its main perk, Icebreaker, states that shattering a frozen target causes an ignition. So when you consider that we're going to be freezing literally everything with our Stasis setup, I think you can see where this is going. Additionally, with the right selection of artifact perks and appropriate tonics, this build is truly taken to the next level. So let's pick things apart one section at a time, starting with our subclass configuration. For our super of choice, we are of course locked to Winter's Wrath. This is the only super that Stasis Warlock has access to, but it has always been very solid for clearing large groups of enemies. As for the Rift, it's your choice between healing or empowering Rift. Do you want consistently available healing or a decent boost to your weapon damage? Me personally, I've just gone for healing Rift. For our melee, we have Penumbral Blast. This melee will instantly freeze a group of ads you throw it towards, and when combined with the artifact perk Crystalline Converter, creates stasis crystals as well, which will become important once we discuss one of our fragment choices. Our grenade of choice is of course going to be the Coldsnap Grenade. It's essential we have this in order for Osmiomancy Gloves to work properly. Moving on to our aspects, our first one is going to be Ice Flare Bolts. This is going to make it so whenever we shatter a frozen target, it will spawn additional seekers that freeze even more enemies. This is fantastic for crowd control and not letting a single ad out of its spawn. Then for our second aspect, we have Glacial Harvest. This is going to make it so whenever we freeze targets, it creates stasis shards around them. And because we have this aspect equipped, collecting said shards will heal you for a small amount, as well as granting 1 stack of frost armor for each stack collected. And it's with this aspect that we're going to be generating our main source of damage resistance. Moving on to the fragments now, our first one is going to be Whisper of Conduction. This fragment allows any and all stasis shards you create to slowly track towards you. And believe me, there's nothing more annoying than having to physically run through your shards. So this fragment is mandatory and removes any thinking required when it comes to collecting shards and getting your frost armor easily. Next up, we have Whisper of Fissures. This is simply going to increase the size and damage of the burst of stasis whenever we shatter a frozen target or break a stasis crystal. There's nothing more to it really, it only serves to increase the damage of our AoE explosions. Moving on, we have Whisper of Shards, and speaking of breaking stasis crystals, Whisper of Shards will provide an additional plus 500% or 6x grenade regeneration rate for up to a maximum of 11 seconds after breaking a stasis crystal. And before episode Revenant, there was actually no point in running this fragment alongside an Osmiomancy build, since you never made any crystals with this setup anyway. But now, with the new artifact, things have changed. More on that in a bit. Finally, for our fourth fragment, we have Whisper of Rime. This is going to increase our maximum stack count of frost armor from 5 to 8, which when at those 8 stacks is a 36% damage resist. Moving on to the weapons section now. First, I'm going to assume you have Icebreaker, then after that I'll discuss what you can use instead if you don't have it. So, assuming you have Icebreaker, in your top slot I would recommend running a Lost Signal grenade launcher. Lost Signal is particularly good this season with all of the artifact perks boosting it, so this is just here if you want to section off a particular ad spawn or weaken a boss. Of course, in our energy slot we have Icebreaker, the crown jewel. And like I mentioned at the beginning, we're using it here because shattering frozen targets will cause an ignition, which is pretty awesome on its own, having both a shatter and ignition simultaneously. But there's another part that I intentionally left out, and that is the fact that doing this will actually cost you 0 ammo. Since the shatter is technically an ability kill, it triggers Icebreaker's no backpack perk, which states final blows or assists with any other weapon or ability have a chance to create ammo for Icebreaker. And because shatter damage is technically ability damage, it counts for that part of the perk. So as long as you're defeating at least 2 frozen enemies at a time, you'll get your ammo completely refunded. And the catalyst, well, that's a completely different ballgame. If you have managed to complete the entire puzzle quest for the catalyst, you will see that the catalyst states that landing a hit on a slowed or frozen target has a chance to return the round to the magazine. And from experience, this actually happens very frequently. I feel it happens about 50% of the time or more, maybe 60%. So essentially, every other shot that you shoot will give you the bullet back, and then on top of that, if that's also a double kill on 2 frozen enemies, it will give you the bullet back from that. So essentially, every once in a while, you'll get 2 bullets back from a single shot, which is pretty cool, meaning you'll never truly run out of ammo with this thing, so you can basically spam it as much as you like. Now, I do hear some of you saying, why are you running double special? Isn't that not very optimal? Well, this actually doesn't really matter much because Icebreaker makes its own ammo through the shatters, so it's far less restrictive than normal, and you can just run a scavenger mod on your boots to make up for that for the top slot weapon. Trust me, from experience, I never had ammo problems while running double special. Now, if you don't have Icebreaker, I'd recommend going with a Lethonym and a rocket sidearm instead. Nothing fancy here. A Lethonym does hit pretty hard with a stasis build, especially with the right selection of Tonic, which we will talk about shortly. Unfortunately, there isn't something that packs quite a punch as Icebreaker does in this specific scenario though. As far as exotic armor and stats are concerned, we are of course using the Osmiomancy Gloves. These will give us 2 Coldsnap Grenade charges and refund the Coldsnap energy on direct hits and impacts, so we can spam them a lot more often. And then stats wise, do prioritize 100 resilience and discipline, then pour the rest into recovery. Now let's talk about our artifact perk selection. Starting in column 2, we have one with frost. This will make it so either your lost signal or your Lethonym has better stats when carrying frost armor. And because we're going to be carrying frost armor all the time, this is going to be active all the time. Then second in column 2, take rapid impacts. This will make it so either one of those weapons will have better reload speed after dealing damage to your enemies. Moving on to column 3, we first have crystalline converter. This will make it so collecting stasis shards charges a meter, which spawns a varying number of crystals after using your melee. It's very important to let this charge, and then once it's fully charged, it will then spawn 3 crystals, which once broken will feed into Whisper of Shards to give that plus 500% Cold Snap ability regen boost. That's it for column 3. Now into column 4, we first have Armor of Eramis. This is simply going to emit a freezing burst whenever your shields break if you're carrying frost armor. It just helps with survivability if you become swarmed, and once again, because we have frost armor all the time, it's always going to be waiting in the background. Next up in column 4, we have Hail the Storm. This will increase both the enemy and crystal shatter damage when boosted, and when it's not boosted, breaking crystals will also spawn a fan of slowing projectiles. It just helps our overall build. Finally, in column 4, we have Concussive Reload to make our grenade launchers weaken bosses. Moving on to column 5, we first have Brain Freeze. This will make it so frozen enemies are surrounded by a slowing fog. Nothing too impactful, but you might as well take it on the off chance that other enemies walk into it. And finally, we have Served Cold. Collecting the stasis shards you make will also give you class ability energy on top of the melee energy it already gives. Now then, in order to seal the deal of the build, we are going to talk about our tonic selection. Our choice of tonic depends on your weapon setup. If you have Icebreaker, go for the Tonic of Stasis Crystallization, or the light blue potion. This boosts Hail the Storm and grants increased enemy shatter damage, as well as giving a small bump in class ability energy when destroying stasis crystals. But if you're using a Lethonym, use the Tonic of Protecting Frost or the pink potion instead, since it increases the amount of damage that primary ammo stasis weapons deal to frozen targets as its passive. And because a Lethonym is primary ammo, it's going to increase that as well. Now let's finish up by talking about our mod choices. And starting with the helmet, we're taking 1 solar targeting to make Icebreaker feel a little less heavy, then stasis and solar siphon to make orbs on double kills with both weapons. For the arms, I'm taking harmonic dexterity for better feeling stasis weapons, impact induction to provide a small bump in grenade energy when using our melee, and bolstering detonation to give class ability energy on grenade damage. For the chest piece, just use resist mods matching the activity that you're doing. And then for the boots, we're taking harmonic scavenger to make sure lost signal gets more ammo from bricks, elemental charge so we gain armor charge through collecting stasis shards, and recuperation for the health boost on orb pickup. Then finally, for the class item, we're taking bomber for the grenade energy on riftcast, special finisher to keep lost signal topped up when we need it, and powerful attraction. As far as the gameplay loop is concerned, it is rather simple. Just throw your grenade into a group of ads, and when at least 2 of them are frozen, shatter them with Icebreaker to cause an ignition and detonate the entire surroundings, as well as getting either 1 or 2 shots completely refunded. Repeat this process indefinitely, because if done right, you'll never run out of grenades or ammo, so you can literally do this forever. This build is perfect for any activity where you have lots of ads coming at you at once, like Onslaught, but it will also be very good for GMs as well, since crowd control is never not nice to have in champion dense content, and the ignitions and shatters together provide a lot of damage from just a single shot, and especially because you can have that shot refunded is very, very nice. So that about does it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed the build, and I hope you have fun running it. As always, there will be a dim link at the top of the description for you to copy the build hassle-free. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. I'll see you in the next one. If you made it this far, thank you so much. Your support means the world. And if you're really into the content I create, consider becoming a member of the channel, which not only lets you support me in the best way possible, it also nets you a whole host of awesome perks along with it. A massive shout out to these members up on screen, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now, dear viewer.